I've worked with practices making $4,000 a month, $6,000, $8,000, and I've worked with practices doing $25,000, $35,000, even $50,000 a month. And here's what surprised me. The difference isn't talent and it's not more certifications. It's not that one therapist is better than the other. In fact, some of the lowest earning practices that I've seen were incredible clinicians. The real separation is structural. So it's how they think about demand. A $5,000 practice is usually reacting to whatever comes in: referrals, Psychology Today inquiries, insurance directories. Some months are decent and some months are dry. There's no real control there. Now, a $25,000 a month practice, on the other hand, doesn't operate on hope. It operates on math. They know how many leads they need. They know their conversion rate. They know what it costs to acquire a client. And because of that, the revenue doesn't feel random. For them, it actually feels predictable. So in this video, I want to break down what actually separates a $5,000 per month practice from a $25,000 per month one, because it's not what most practice owners think. Now, here's where the real shift starts to happen. Early on in my career, I worked at a large, well-known marketing firm. One of my first clients was a practice owner that was making around $6,000 per month. He was an incredible clinician, but he was struggling with volatility in his calendar, where he was fully booked some weeks and completely dry on others. And even those weeks where he was full, he was still not making much of a profit. And every call we had early on sounded exactly the same. I just need more referrals. I need to get listed in a few more directories. Maybe once insurance picks up, I'll stabilize. His entire existing strategy was wait and just hope that the market picks up or that something would magically solve his revenue problems. Now contrast that with another practice that I worked with later that year that was doing $26,000 a month. Same level of clinical skill, but completely different conversation. This guy wasn't asking, how do I get more referrals? He was asking, how many leads do we need this month? What's our conversion rate? If we want to grow, how much demand do we need to generate this month? That's when I realized that the biggest difference between practice owners who succeed and those who barely get by is not only the quality of the questions that they were asking, but the business mindset that they were operating from. It isn't all about leads, it's about mindset and perspective as business leverage. At $5,000 a month, you're reacting to demand and the circumstances surrounding it. At $25,000, you're directing and capturing that demand. And that's the first identity split. So let's break this down into the real first difference, which is hope versus system. A $5,000 practice is usually referral dependent. If referrals come in, revenue goes up. If they slow down, revenue drops. It's directory dependent, such as Psychology Today, insurance panels, word of mouth. It's passive. The strategy is essentially be visible and wait. And because of that, the months are unpredictable. Some months feel encouraging while others feel stressful, but there's no real engine underneath it. Now look at a $25,000 practice. There's an engine in place. Book calls don't happen randomly. They're intentionally generated. They know their conversion rate. So if 10 people book, they know roughly how many will become clients. They know their cost per lead. They know what it costs to actually acquire a client. They track metrics, not obsessively, but strategically. So growth stops feeling emotional and starts feeling mechanical. And this is the part that most people don't want to hear. Low revenue practices operate on hope, while high revenue practices operate on math. And math is predictable. So while hope might feel easier in the short term, it's not predictable, and it's definitely not a long-term play. The second difference is identity, and this one is deeper than most people realize. A $5,000 practice owner is usually still thinking like a therapist. The focus is clinical work, helping clients, and improving outcomes, which is important. But when it comes to growth, these same practice owners feel a bit of a hesitation. So marketing feels uncomfortable to them, selling feels weird and like a foreign concept to them, and raising rates feels scary. So pricing stays low, margins stay thin, and the solution becomes work more hours. That's a clinician identity. Now, if we take a look at a $25,000 practice owner, they still care deeply about clinical outcomes, but they think like a CEO. So they understand positioning, they design demand, and they actively protect their margin. They make strategic decisions instead of emotional ones. And here's the key. The biggest shift isn't marketing, it's identity and mindset. Because once you stop seeing yourself as just the therapist and you start seeing yourself as the operator of a business, which you are, everything changes. Pricing changes, decisions change, tolerance for volatility changes, and growth stops feeling accidental and starts feeling intentional. The third difference is leverage, specifically insurance dependence versus private pay leverage. And this is where a lot of practices quietly cap their own ceiling. A $5,000 practice is usually waiting on insurance payouts. Payments come in when they come in, reimbursements are fixed, and margins are thin. Now, there's very little control over pricing with that model. You can't meaningfully raise rates. You can't really adjust based on demand. You're really operating inside of someone else's system. And when you operate inside of someone else's system, your income ceiling is largely defined by that system. Now, if we take a look at a $25,000 practice that has meaningful private pay leverage, there's pricing power, there's predictable cash flow, and margins are also higher. Also, perceived value actually increases because price and positioning are aligned. When a practice controls its pricing, it controls its growth trajectory. And here's the key: insurance caps your income ceiling, but private pay actually expands it. So that doesn't mean that insurance is bad, it means it limits leverage. And leverage is what separates $5,000 volatility from $25,000 stability. The fourth difference is scarcity thinking versus market positioning. And this one is subtle, but it changes everything. So I remember working with a practice owner a few years ago who was stuck around $7,000 per month. And every conversation that we had came back to the same thing, which was there just aren't enough clients. It's saturated in my area. Everyone else is cheaper. And from her perspective, that felt true at the time. And she was looking at the market through the lens of competition. So who's charging less, who's nearby, who takes more insurance panels. And when you look at the market that way, it will always feel crowded. Now contrast that with another practice owner that I had worked with who had crossed $25,000 a month, and she was in the same city, same licensing requirements, same overall market conditions, but completely different mindset. She wasn't asking, is it saturated? She was asking, how do I differentiate? Who's my premium buyer? How do I dominate a micro niche? That shift from competition to positioning is massive. Scarcity thinking focuses on what's missing, while positioning thinking focuses on what makes you distinct. So scarcity says there aren't enough clients, while positioning says there are more than enough, just not for everyone. Okay? So the moment you stop trying to compete on price and you start competing on clarity and specialization, you stop fighting the market and you start attracting the right segment of it. That's the difference between surviving in a crowded space and owning a defined one. So when you zoom out and you look at all of this together, the difference between $5,000 a month and $25,000 a month isn't hustle, it's just control. It's not that one person cares more about their clients, it's that one practice is operating inside forces that it doesn't control, and the other has built systems to control the variables that matter: control over pricing, control over positioning. When you control demand, your revenue doesn't feel random. And when you control pricing, margins stop feeling tight and actually give you some breathing room. When you control positioning, competition stops feeling threatening. And that is the real separation. $5,000 practices live in reaction mode. $25,000 practices live in intention. And once you see that, it's very hard to unsee. So if you're watching this and you're somewhere in that $5,000 to $10,000 range and you're realizing that maybe the issue isn't effort but structure, then the next step isn't to hustle harder, it's to build the right foundation. I have another video on this channel called How to Build a 10K per month therapy practice step by step. And in that video, I break down the actual mechanics of what needs to be in place to get you to that first stable $10,000 a month. So if this conversation resonated with you, that is the next video that I would watch. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.